Yesterday, I was in the supermarket here in Montreal, and there was a little family in front of us, a young mom, a young dad, and then a little baby kid, like 3, 4 years old. And at our supermarket, there was little training carts that said in French, future client in training, with a little flag that comes up at the top. And there's a tiny little cart. And the family had put all their stuff in the little tiny cart. And the parents were at the checkout where you pay. And the little baby was taking all the stuff out with his little mittens and putting everything on the countertop and was going super slow. And the man behind me is like, okay, I understand you have to teach your kids, but can you hurry it up a little bit?
Did he
And my
say that out
reaction was,
loud?
yeah, yeah.
What?
And I didn't say anything. I just, in my mind, how do we expect children to be good at something if we never give them the opportunity to be bad at it? Because there's nothing on earth that we do well without having first done it badly. So I want to discuss with you today what it's like as a mom to teach our kids things and where's the boundary in that and how do we let them do it badly long enough for them to do it well.
Oh my gosh, I love that idea so much. So, this thought also came to me over the holidays when I was wrapping presents. The tradition in my household is that I wrap presents pretty much the minute they arrive in my house because I want to have a tree full of presents. And so, the whole entire season of Christmas, I have all of the wrapping paper and everything readily available because I want to be able to do it right away. The rest of the family waits until literally Christmas Eve, and then they all rush over to my house and they wrap presents using all my stuff. And it's all just like, and it's just a hot mess. And I just got to thinking, it would be so fun to really just talk through all of those things that we just assume that people know how to do, but they probably don't if we don't teach them. And the reason that you and I know how to wrap presents is because one of the very first jobs that our mom ever had was in a department store wrapping presents. So she learned how to do it well, and then she taught us how to do it well. And I apparently haven't taught my kids how to do it well because
They're
they
only
kind of suck
29.
at
It's
it.
okay.
If you don't have wrapping presents by 29, girl, you ain't going to get it. I think for me, there's a generational, like my generation was this feral, kick you out of the house first thing in the morning, and you're gone the whole entire day, and you just figure your shit out on the fly. And then you come home real late at night after the TV commercial comes on, reminding your parents to check on you. Do you know where your children are? And I think that as a response to that, a lot of the people in my generation sort of assumed that our kids would learn the same way we learned, which is just throw you out into the world and you figure it out. And so I do think that there are a lot of things that we maybe didn't necessarily teach our kids. I don't know if we can teach our kids how to do things we ourselves don't know how to do. So that's another piece of it.
The things that we figured out on our own, it maybe didn't occur to us that we need to teach our kids those things. So I want to make a distinction here between teaching our kids intangibles, the values, the discipline, the emotional maturity, those types of things, and then teaching them how to do stuff,
Yeah.
right? Because teaching them how to do stuff, I think it's a lot harder because, as you said, we figured it out ourselves. And so I assume my kids are going to figure it out themselves. My daughter, when she was a teenager, and my 12-year-old is starting to hint at this, telling me, Mom, not everything is a teachable moment. When I think everything is a teachable moment, it's my job, so you're just going to have to put up with it. But talking
Yeah.
about the tangible things, right? I'm not good at cooking, so I never taught my kids to cook. How am I going to teach them if I don't know how to do it well or if I don't care about it that much?
We never were taught how to cook because, again, I think this is partly generational, but our moms were in the workplace and fighting tooth and nail to have a space in the workplace. Then coming home and also doing all of the domestic labor was just not realistic for some of those pioneering women in career. Plus, I think our mom hated to cook, which is
Yes.
fine. Not everybody has to like it. But
Right.
I literally, one time when I was going out into the working world, had a job opportunity in a rural setting, and I turned it down because there was not enough fast food. And I thought I would starve to death because I did not know how to cook. So after that experience, I decided I would teach myself how to cook. I went and got some chicken. I sliced it all up and I put it in a pan, and I was cooking this chicken. I was waiting for it to brown the way beef browns. And I cooked it and I cooked it and I cooked it. I cooked that thing for like 45 minutes on a fry pan in strips, and it never didn't turn white.
Yes.
Man, that was the worst chicken I had ever had in my whole entire life. But I was also really damn proud of that chicken because even though it was almost inedible, I made it myself. And it was the first thing that I taught myself how to do in a long string of finally teaching myself how to cook.
So this is an incredibly valuable experience to have because you learned that you're capable. You can make mistakes and then come out the other end knowing something, learn from those mistakes. Is it more valuable for you to make your kids learn their own things and make their own mistakes and have that lesson of, hey, I'm competent or I can become competent? Or is it important to teach them how long and how to spice and cook chicken?
So I think what you're asking is, would it be better to teach them how or to throw them to the wolves and let them figure it out? I
That's what I'm asking.
I think that's case by case. I think it depends on what it is. When they call me from the road out of the blue and say to me, I just got into a fender bender, but I don't know what to do and the police are on the way. That's not the best time to throw them to the wolves, right? There have been multiple times that I have gotten this phone call, and most of the time I have arrived on the scene before the police did because I just wanted to give my kids that little bit of cushion, that little bit of support, and like, this is what you do. Don't worry about it. Because one of the other things in a situation like that, where all of a sudden now it's a legal issue, is you don't want your kids saying, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I wasn't watching. I only looked at my phone for a second. No, keep that to yourself. There's plenty of time to be honest and other times to keep your honesty to yourself. So there are times when I think it's appropriate to just step right in and be like, just do as I do, say as I say.
Teaching them how to handle situations like that, or on a different podcast, you were talking about how to handle a situation if you're in the Mall of America and you're approached by a potential trafficker, how to respond to that. You respond with confidence, not meekness and vulnerability. Teaching them how to handle different circumstances, like when the police arrive at a car accident, that's something we can talk about in a day-to-day life when it's not an emergency. But how do we know that they've absorbed that? And if the pressure is going to change their behavior, and maybe they're going to behave in a different way or forget everything that we said, I think it's important to prepare our kids for those types of things. But the number of things that we have to prepare them for is limitless.
I saw a TikTok the other day, and it was a mom with a kid that was probably 8 or 9, and they were rehearsing what he would say when he received presents from people.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so she would say, if someone gives you a gift, what do you say? Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And she said, and what do you do when other people are opening their gifts? And he would think, I don't open my gifts at the same time. I let everybody take turns. She's like, yes, okay. What do you say if the gift you got, you already have? And he said, I would say, thank you so much. I have one at home. She's like, nope, try again. And he goes, but I do have one at home. And she said, but do you want to tell them that in that moment? No, I guess not. And so she practiced it with him, and he just landed on, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It's a huge point you're bringing up right now. The kid figured it out and practiced it with the mom's coaching versus the mom telling him this is what you say, and then when he's exposed to the situation under pressure, he will forget it. What did my mom say? So for him to think it through, figure it out, and then come up with the right answer, then he's internalized that behavior and can execute that when he's faced with that situation. I think it's the same thing with anything we teach our kids. I think telling them how to do something kind of useless, whether it's the intangible or the like baking. Well, here are the 10 things you need, and you need the dry ingredients to get to know each other first. They're not going to remember any of that when they get to baking. We have to let them have their hands on and make a mess and cook terrible cookies and experience that growth under our care and guidance. I think that's the only way they're going to learn, unless we throw them to the wolves, which is another option.
Yeah, I don't want to do that with them anymore, especially being young adults in a very challenging world.
I'm a single mom, so it's a bit different because everything they've learned from a parent has come from me. And I don't cook, so I haven't taught them how to cook really well, much at all. I have taught them how to care for their car. Neither of them have a car. So I spent a good considered effort to teach them how to get gas and how to put radiator fluid in, how to change a tire. We don't really do changing oil anymore. We live in a snowy climate, so it doesn't make sense to do it at our own home, and it's $20. So I didn't teach them to change the oil, but I taught them the concept of how a car works and how an engine functions. So they know something about cars and how to care for the cars and make sure that the body is cared for. I've done a lot with that. And my 20-year-old daughter now doesn't drive and doesn't want to drive. So
Oh,
if she ever does want to drive, she knows how to take care of a car. But that's something that I put a lot of effort into because it's something that I deal with as an adult day to day. The other big thing that I'm really trying to teach my kids is how to take care of their household, their home. So they both live with me. So I'm honestly the one who takes care of most of the house stuff. But to make sure things are clean and the dishes are put away and that there's no disgusting food in your room and that everything's picked up off the floor. All those things, I really want them to learn that. I want them to be good roommates and I want them to live in a comfortable place and not have the anxiety of a cluttered, dirty world when they get out in the world. So those are the two things I think I've put the most effort into.
when my kids were teenagers, I put each of them through what I called boot camp. And what I did was I took about a week and intentionally taught them all of the things about functioning in a household that they would need to know once they moved out, like laundry. And it's not that they didn't do laundry before, but it occurred to me after them doing laundry that I've never actually just talked through the kind of detergent and why you would use this one instead of that one and the different things that the temperature will do to your clothing and whether you want to use dryer sheets or not. We just do things and then expect that they would understand why we do things. So I did a lot of that, not only teaching them what to do, but why we do it. I took them to the grocery store and I gave them each like $25 or $30 and I said, you need to plan a meal. So you got to look at the prices and you got to see how much this is going to cost and then figure it all out and what you're going to need. And that was probably one of the funnest times that I've had with my kids because it really was a lighthearted boot camp. But it was really interesting for me to recognize how little I had taught them about why we do the things we do. And we did this when we were growing up. There were a number of things that we learned how to do a particular way and then learned a lot later that that was not necessary, but we just did it
The
that
only
way
way, yeah.
because that's the way we've always done it.
So I've done something similar with my kids. Just last week, I taught my son how to clean the bathroom. He did not like it. He did not enjoy it at all, but he cleaned the bath. He figured out what soap goes where and where the sponges are. And we even used a steamer to deep clean the windowsill. So it was like full on, this is what you're going to do. And he did the whole thing. He did the whole all three of our bathrooms. And so now he knows how to do it, but he's not going to do it in the future. I think he's not going to want to do it unless I force that. But he knows how, at least in the age that he is, he knows how. And the same thing, I did something similar with my daughter with buying food. I gave her a certain amount of money. I asked her what she thought food costs for a week for one person, and she gave me a number, and she was way off, so I doubled it. And I said, here's the cash you can have for food for a week, and I want you to plan your meals and your lunches and things you have to go take out into the world, and you could buy whatever you want. And we spent, honestly, hour and 15 minutes, hour and 45 minutes at the grocery store where she was comparing things and what fresh fruit costs versus processed foods. And she learned a lot in that moment because it wasn't about what you're going to buy for dinner tonight. It was the whole week of, I'm going to buy a potato and I can use that twice, or I'm going to buy a jar of mayonnaise and I can use that for all of my meals. It was a really good exercise for her. I think she learned a lot from it.
I sometimes wonder if some of the things that I'm trying to teach my kids become irrelevant because we live in privilege.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think we live in significant privilege. Both of my children, when they leave my house, they're going to be poor, relatively poor. And they're going to have to do things on their own. I'm not going to finance their lives until they're 35, 40, unless something terrible happens. But I'm not going to finance their lives in general. So they're going to have to struggle with how they're going to pay for food. And they're going to have to pay their rent. And they're going to have to go to work every day and make sure they have enough money to live. And I think it's important for my kids, at least, to be poor while they're struggling and figuring out how to be an adult with my emotional support.
If you like our content, please click like and subscribe. It really helps us out. We're so grateful you're here.
Thank you. The other day, I made cookies with my son, and I used your recipe because I've always loved your chocolate chip cookies. And when I was an adult, you told me it was a Nestle Toll House recipe,
It's
but
on the
you
bag.
did the Nestle Toll House recipe, and those cookies came out like wafers. They were tasty and gooey and chewy, but we had such a good time. And my son's 12, and he had never licked raw cookie dough batter off of the bowl. My son's 12 years old, and he's never actually licked the bowl or eaten raw cookie dough. And that's a rite of childhood. So I'm thinking, I haven't given my son this opportunity. So I have a picture of him, taller than me, licking the raw cookie dough. And it was just such a beautiful moment of the rite of childhood, learning how to make cookies.
I have a 26 or 27-year-old. I don't know. I can't do the math. He's about that age group. And he lives a lifestyle the way that I envision Friends. Remember the TV show Friends, where they just like a bunch of them just hung out all the time? That's my kid and his friends. And so this holiday, they got together for a Friendsgiving. And the rule was that everybody had to select a country randomly. They didn't know which one they were going to get assigned. And then they had to make their dish from that country. And then when they all got together, they didn't tell each other what country the dish was from. They had to guess. That was part of the deal. So my son ended up with a dish from Canada. And he decided he was going to make a tortilla. He told me that he wanted to make a tortilla.
The Canadian
And I was
tortilla.
like, a tortilla? That's not that hard to make, but it's not that fancy. No, tortilla. Anyway, it's basically a meat pie. And I said, well, there's a couple ways you can do it. I said, you can go and you can buy a pre-made pie crust, frozen one, like we've done sometimes in the past. I said, or you can make your own pie dough. And he's like, if I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it fresh. So I'm like, okay, so the first time that you're going to learn how to cook something, you're going with pie dough? I'm like,
That
that's
sounds like good fun.
ambitious. He came over on Saturday so that we could make the dough so that it would have overnight to chill. And then he came over on Sunday and we walked over to the market, picked up the items that he needed, and then we just laid it all out. And let me tell you what, I just sat back and watched him do the whole entire thing. And I'm not going to lie, it was really, really difficult because he came to my kitchen because I have all the things. He's listing off all these spices. I have the most incredible spice rack on the planet, if I do say so myself. I have all the spices. So he's listing off all these things: ground mustard, cumin, cinnamon, and I had every single one. So that's why you come to my house, because that would have been like $50 worth of spices if he'd had to buy those. But it was so difficult not to just grab a knife and start chopping stuff. Not because I didn't think he could do it, but it's my kitchen and I love to cook. And here we have a whole kitchen full of fresh food that we're going to, oh man, it was so difficult. And I wanted to go over and stir the pot, like just hands to yourself. Keep your hands to yourself. And I did. And every now and then he would ask me something about how to do this or that. And he didn't even need it. He had a YouTuber teaching him how to do the things. And so he ended up with this spectacular meat pie. And it was beautiful. But it was really, really fun just to sit in the kitchen and observe him cooking for the first time, like legitimately cooking.
So this goes back to what you were saying earlier about taking it on a case by case basis, because there is the I will show you how to do it or tell you how to do it, and then there is the we will do it together, and then there's the I will be in the background while you do it all together, and then there's a we're not even going to help you and you can figure it out yourself. We have to take it on a case by case basis. What is the activity and what is the age group and how much experience do they have in related things? You mentioned something interesting to me, and that was the YouTuber who was teaching him how to do it. And I wonder if we as parents have any experience that can't be replicated by a YouTuber. I think yes.
Wow.
I think yes.
Yes. Yes. It would have been a completely different experience if he had tried to do it in his own house without a live person there.
Well, live
A
mother
live mother.
there.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's important we know how we know their language, we know what they're good at, we know what their preferences are. Yeah, I think mothers will win over YouTube all the time. Besides, with YouTube, you're going to have 50 ways of doing it, and they're going to conflict with each other. So at least
Hmm.
with a mother, you only have one way of doing it or two ways,
Well, and the
right?
YouTuber isn't going to tell you all of the little secrets. Like
Yeah.
this, I just learned this. My sister, thank you very much, just bought me a pepper grinder for my kitchen because that's one of the few things I didn't have in my kitchen. And so we're grinding up this pepper and it's coming out just like powder. It's so fine. And I was telling you about this, and you're like, if you spin the little metal part at the top, you can change the coarseness of the peppers that you're grinding. And I was like, oh, I never would have thought of that. YouTubers aren't going to remember to tell you that kind of stuff. So when you're standing there
Right.
beside a person, like actually hands on, that's the kind of stuff that only a mom can teach or a sister. I'm just saying.
They don't know the brand of your pepper grinder. They don't know whether you're trying to substitute baking powder with something else or mayonnaise versus ranch dressing. They don't know all this. They don't know if your butter is salted. There's so much that is really in the moment that you have to know about what they're working with to give them good advice.
At the end of the meal, too, at the end of cooking together, he said, we should do something like this more often. It's really fun to have a mom and son date night.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, yeah,
That's
it really
that's such
is.
a great reward for you. Not to go deep, but do you teach your sons and your daughter the same things?
I actually do teach my sons and my daughter many things that are related to gender. So I have taught my daughter all of the safety things, like we were mentioning at the Mall of America. If someone approaches you and gives you a compliment, you say thank you, because if you say, then they perceive you as victim material. But I've also taught my sons how to be respectful of women. So this is very one-sided. Since we're going down this road, I don't think I've spent as much time teaching both of the genders of my kids how to be as respectful to men as I have taught them how to be respectful to women.
I don't know right now whether you're joking or being sarcastic because we women, we men, we all colors, all in between genders, all come out of the womb into this society knowing that we must respect men. So
Thank
I
you.
don't think that we need to put extra effort into specifically respecting men versus respecting humanity.
That's fair. However, I'm so regularly on a bandwagon of respecting women, appreciating them, listening to them, making sure that no means no and only an enthusiastic yes means yes, and all of those things. And then my sons will sometimes come and they will share with me their experiences out in the wild, trying to engage with women who, right now, I'm going to be honest, women right now in the culture are kind of hostile toward men. Rightfully so. Rightfully so. I think that most of the women that I have come across have just had enough of the misogyny and the abuses. But then to hear it from the perspective of my sons, who are having a hard time just even engaging a conversation with a woman because they shut them down immediately, I do start to feel like, okay, well, maybe there is something to be said about giving all people a chance. If, I don't know, gosh, damn it, I don't know, I don't like this conversation because it's making me really think. So I wish that some of the women would give my sons a chance to engage in conversation. But at the same time, I respect that if that's not what they're there for, they don't owe my son's conversation at all. They don't owe it. But I wish that some of them would offer it.
That's a tough one because my son is 12 and he cares about hockey and foosball and baseball. He doesn't even know that females exist at this point. So I will probably be calling you a lot when this issue comes up of women are not giving him a chance, right? And I know that that's happening. And I think the response to that in general in our society has been if you approach a woman non-threatening and non-sexually, talk about the chicken in the grocery aisle, I think that's a much more acceptable conversation for a woman. And maybe there's a learning that has to be had about how you approach a woman. And you start with something that's really non-threatening, low stakes. But I don't know because I'm not a mother of your two sons,
So,
who are, by the way, amazing people. And I'm surprised that there are not women knocking down both of their doors. They're just such good people.
well, and what
Yeah.
I'm hearing from them is that they're not just being shut down. And to be fair, these are stories that my sons are telling me about their friends because my sons are like, fuck that. I'm not going to waste my time. So they're watching their friends go out and try to engage women. And what they're hearing and observing is how very hostile the women are towards the men who are approaching them. So it's not even just a no, it's like a, well, hell no. It's rude. And that's hard
Yeah.
for me. That's hard for me because I do think a woman has a right to be like, yep, no. But do I want my daughter even to be like, oh, hell no? I don't know. I think there's a line. It's such a fine line right in there between speaking your truth and just being a dick.
But we've seen, no, no, not defending hostility. I don't think that's always appropriate, but we've seen video after video evidence of men who cannot take no for an answer. So a polite no is sometimes met with okay and you back off, sometimes met with aggression and anger and use stupid B word and throwing stuff at the woman, and sometimes met with persistence to the point where the only thing that would get them to stop is hell no, back up, right? So we don't have a context for
Mhm.
these conversations with your son's friends. If they're approaching and they're saying, "Hey, I think I saw you at the thing," or and the woman's being like, "Hell no, back up," and she's in a bar, and this is where you typically go for a social situation. That's a completely different story than if they're in the grocery store looking at the chicken and the guy goes, "Nice breasts."
Oh my God,
Because if
please
someone
tell
did
me
that to
that
me,
that
Rob,
doesn't happen in real life.
I'm in my 50s and I'm invisible to people who are at that age, so it doesn't happen to me, but things like that definitely happen throughout my 20s and 30s.
I know it's true.
So I hope our kids are in a different era without the context of what your son's friends are doing and where the women are and what they're saying back to them. There's nothing we can teach your sons about what to do. I think the only thing is to teach them about respect and really what consent is, which seems really straightforward and it's just not. And I think it's especially not straightforward for men who are taught very confusing social constructs. So it's a nuanced issue, and I think we just have to keep trying, talking about consent and talking about boundaries. I see so much this grandma in you who wants your sons to be settled down with nice people, or even just spend time with nice people. I don't mean settle down, but to have the chance to be with an amazing woman because they're amazing men. And I see that, but I think the context needs to be there. Do you feel like you've done a good enough job with your sons teaching them about boundaries and consent?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Great. I think that's all you can do. You're not going to teach them how to pick up a woman.
No, that's true. Although I did tell them the other day about a TikTok that I came across that was from a young man who had just gone on a first date, and he was raving and gushing about this first date, about it was the most amazing thing, and this woman that he dated was just like perfect. And then about 10 minutes into this rant, just also happened to slip in that his parents and her parents actually set them up. And I was like, I just want y'all to know that that's what this young man was saying. And my kid's reaction was, do you have someone to set me up with? It's like, I'm
For
sorry,
that door, I'm
I
on
wish
it.
I did. I just don't at the moment currently have those people
Okay,
in my
so
life.
you're onto something because I heard a news article not even 2 weeks ago on an NPR show about the new way that young people are meeting people, and that is to let their parents swipe on Tinder for them. The parents are going to look for people. I know what my son likes. I know what my daughter likes. I'm going to do the left and right swiping for them so we can pick a couple of matches that I think would be good for you. And the young people, the 20s, are actually asking their parents to do this for them. So this is more than your parents teaching you. This is your parents stepping in and doing it for you.
No.
And then the article that I was listening to, one of the people describing the article was Hindu. And he said, wait, white people just discovered arranged marriages?
I'm not in
Well,
favor
tongue in
of
cheek,
that.
but
I'm not in favor of that. That reeks to me a little bit of over functioning for your child. It's a
I
completely
agree.
different thing to know somebody and be like, hey, I think you'd like this person, than it is to sit down
Yeah.
with a Tinder profile and do all the swiping. That's like, y'all step up and do your own damn work. That's like making you do all
I
the homework and then you don't get the grade.
I agree with you completely, but we're also in 2026 and it's a new era. I would not look for dates for my kids. I would have no idea what they're into in that moment. But I can see that it's a new era and Tinder's not sort of this grimy thing that people go to for sex. It's like a thing where people actually go and try to find substantive relationships.
Yeah, I have no problem with them being on Tinder. I have a problem with a parent being on Tinder for them.
Especially if the other people don't know. Yes, I agree with you. I think that's going too far. That's not teaching your kids, that's doing for your kids.
Yeah, don't and you shouldn't
Right,
do that for
right.
them. At least in our culture. There are other
There's
cultures where arranged marriages is the norm, and I don't know enough about those to really have a huge thing to say about it. It's just not our normal, and I don't
as
want
we
it to
teach
be.
our that's not something that you and I are going to do and that it's really we're talking about our own experiences with our kids, right? So I think with dating, talking about consent and talking about boundaries and mature relationships and emotional maturity and red flags and green flags. I think that's all we can do. And the rest, I think that's the cat throw them to the wolves category. Because if we do it for them, that's just weird in my mind.
I do think that we've tended as a culture to overfunction for our kids. And I think it's okay to not do that anymore. I think teaching them how to do things and overfunctioning. Okay, so I have actually heard stories about moms who will follow up on their children's job interviews and call the interviewer to make sure that they know just how spectacular their child actually is.
So I think this is a fundamental failure of teaching your kids things. So there are a couple of TikTokers that I follow who are 18 to 24 age range, and they're going to the doctor and calling their mom, what's my address? Where do I find my insurance? And just asking super basic questions. There's one TikToker who's a dad who's got a kid in college. He says, text from my teen, and they're asking all these weird things that the kid should know. And the parents sort of mocking the kid for not knowing. But I feel like on some level, not teaching the kids or having done everything for filling out all their paperwork for them and not teaching them their social security number and all of those things that the kids should know before they leave home, that's on the parents to do that. So you can't throw your kid out into college without teaching them that stuff and then mock them for not knowing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard one that was asked what was his social, and he was like, it's on Snapchat. No, that's not your social.
So people can make mistakes, and kids are going to do that. They're out in the world and they're nervous and everything. I'm not talking about that. It's just completely unprepared to be out in the world and asking super basic questions that could have been taught when they were a little bit younger.
So here's what I'm finding interesting about the way that our culture is shaking out right now. When we were growing up, there was a path, and everything else off that path was going to be disastrous, life-changing disaster. The path was you get good grades in school, and then you go to college, and then you get married, and then you have a family, and then you get a house, and then you have a career, and then you retire, and then you enjoy your retirement. Like that was the path. And there was no straying and there was no coming back. You know, like once you were out of the house, you gave your key back, and it was like, you don't get a second chance at this. And if you did, then it was the trope of you were living in your mom's basement because you sucked at life so bad. We're living in a completely different world right now where we have systemically prevented an entire generation of young people from the ability to function as adults. They can't afford to live on the salaries that they're making. Single people cannot afford to live. So my kids are not going to be able to buy a house anytime soon. Even just to rent an apartment, they're going to have roommates because they can't even afford a single room on the salaries that they're making. It's a travesty on the one hand that we haven't given our kids these opportunities. But on the flip side of it, I think it's really forced us to have to look at what's important. And that this one single path that we were taught is the path through life is only one of millions of paths that people can take through life. And I think one of the downfalls of this singular path is that we have created nuclear families, which means that we have isolated our nuclear families from the support of the greater family, from extended family. And we have so siloed ourselves that we have completely eliminated the support systems that other cultures still maintain. Even as far as our parents aging out, we put them into assisted communities. There are cultures where the expectation is once your parents become elderly, you take care of them in the home. Now, I'm not suggesting that we all have to jump out and do that because our system isn't designed for that, right? We don't have stay-at-home sandwich generation parents who can take care of the kids and the grandparents at the same time. We have to all be working. So our system isn't designed for that. But I do like that this new way of being is forcing us to really take a look at that again and be like, really, is it really that awesome to expect our kids? Like, do we really want to force them out into the world where they have to try to figure out how to afford stuff in a system that's not designed for that? Or maybe we back up a step and we put those support systems back into place. And maybe a 29 or 30-year-old living in their parents' home is not a failure, it's not a step backwards, but maybe that's the necessary step, not only in then eventually propelling them into their own lives, but living as communities of intergenerational, multi-generational families right now.
So how many pieces of tape do you teach them to wrap presents with?
We can't not go deep. We can't do it. We can't do it. Every time we were going to not go deep, every time we were going to not go deep, I was like on board of that conversation.
You bring up a good point about what our parents taught us, which was high school grades, go to college in 4 years, you pick a major, you pick that career, you get married, you get a cat, you get a baby, you get a house, you retire. This was a very clear path, and we didn't stray from that path, as you said. In a way, we teach our kids what our parents teach us. And so we came to having kids when we were younger and expecting them to follow the same path because that's what we knew. Somewhere along the lines, when society is starting to change and people are opening up their ideas of what a career is and ideas of what a relationship is and ideas about what housing is and who you can house with, as all of those things started to change, we as parents are having to change as well. So what we teach our kids with regard to their life path is much different from what our parents taught us. And I think there are probably many examples of us struggling to figure out what our parents taught us, which we need to teach our kids, or versus what our parents taught us, which doesn't apply anymore. And we need to teach our kids something different. Not that they were wrong, but society is different right now. So I think in this particular case where we're not teaching our kids what our parents taught us, it gives them a lot more opportunity, and it gives them permission and grace to choose the kinds of jobs, relationships, housing, kids, family, pets that they want. And I think that's a huge development, but I think it was a difficult change, at least for me, to go through, to recognize my kids don't need to go through that ABCDE death path. So I want to ask you, what are the other examples of things that we learned as kids that our parents taught us? And I'm not blaming our parents, they were right for the times, that we've decided are no longer what we want to teach our kids.
I still want to teach them what I know. But what I don't want to
So
do
what
is
do we
I don't want to place on them an expectation that they respond to that, whatever the situation is, in the same way I would respond to it. I think that's one of the things that I would say is that when our generation was becoming young adults, our parents' go-to line was, trust me, I know what you're going through because I've been there before. And for our generation, that probably wasn't that far off because we kind of still grew up in a similar sort of way. But we cannot say that to our children and have it ring true. I cannot say to my kids, trust me, I know the way through. I've been there before, because I have not experienced the world that they are living in. We were not tech natives. That changes everything. So I think as a parent, my responsibility to my children is to teach them as much as I can and then back the fuck off and give them the space to respond to the world in the way that they best know how. Because I do not know what it's like to be a 20-something in 2026.
I absolutely hear you, and I hear them because I feel like this is a lot of their voice as well coming through you. The fact that we haven't lived as a 20 something in 2026 doesn't invalidate all of the wisdom about the world that we've accumulated. I agree with you that I think it's a fine line between where we share what we know about the world from our perspective and what we've gone through and all the wisdom that we've accumulated that could be applicable to them. Maybe it's not, maybe it is, but I don't think it invalidates what we know. And I think that the line between teach them what we know and then back up, I think that's very case by case. And making that distinction where the line is to let them figure it out or to guide them through it is really hard.
It is. I don't think that I'm suggesting that we don't share wisdom. I think what I'm
Yeah.
suggesting is that we don't make assumptions about how they should behave or how they should respond or how they should function. I think that's the assumptions that I'm really talking about. We can't assume that we know how to function in this world. We can give wisdom that hopefully will guide them and that they can add the wisdom that we offer to them along with their lived experience and find path forward. For example, this linear death path that we keep talking about, the college, job, career, and retirement, I cannot make the assumption that is going to be the best path for any of the kids in our lives. It might be the best path for a kid, but it also might not be. And I can't assume. Okay, so this is since we're going deep. When we were growing up, there was an understanding that if a girl got pregnant young, it would ruin her life. Straight up ruin her life. Her life was over. And even as a young teen, I remember distinctly thinking to myself, who says that's going to ruin your life? Adding a person is going to make it dramatically different than the life that you would plan if you didn't have a kid in it. But the automatic assumption that a child entering into a teen's world is going to destroy them is also placing on that child the burden of being the thing that destroyed the parent. So when we started to shift that thinking, where now teen pregnancy wasn't this huge big stigma where you would literally send your pregnant teen away until the baby was born so that nobody knew about it. Like, what the fuck is that?
Right.
But now we're shifting where if teenagers get pregnant and they have the support system like you and I would offer, if that were the case, that would be a vastly different world. And it doesn't mean, and I'm not necessarily saying that we would step right in and we would become the parent, but we would have enough wisdom and the support and the ability to rethink what we want to offer and what this addition of a child could do with our kids. We would have the ability to reshape that in such a way that we wouldn't be placing on the child the burden of being the destroyer, or place on our own children the burden of being the ones that fucked their lives for good. I just think that's one of the things that's different about our generation, or at least specifically you and me. I wouldn't place on my kids that burden. I would give them space to figure out how to make it work rather than looking at it as something that destroyed them. I would help them to see as something that has just reshaped the direction that they were headed in.
In our era, there were several things that would really ruin your life. Not going to college. Devastate. You're a bum, you're a dropout, you're a failure, or even taking longer to go to college. Not having a career, having a job instead of a career. Not working for a company, not securing that long-term job.
Yeah.
Not being in a relationship and staying with that relationship until you want to kill yourself. There are lots of things that we were taught when we were young would ruin our lives that are actually not at all true, and maybe even toxic. Like you're saying, a baby would grow up thinking that they're the ones who ruined their mother's lives. Or if you dropped out of college, then you never had any potential and you couldn't do anything with your life. So things like that.
So I think the most important thing for me is to make sure that when you buy the wrapping paper, you get the thick paper, not the thin paper that rips.
It just rips.
Because you want to be able to take those scissors and just right through without
The
ripping
thick
the
paper,
paper.
the absolute satisfaction of the thick paper and the scissors just to the end without that little
Totally
at the end.
Totally
Satisfying.
worth it. Totally worth it. Damn, girl. So we set out to talk about really fun things, just goofy things that we wanted to teach our kids. And we went deep like we always do. We always go deep because ultimately these things matter. I think that's why I get so passionate about wanting to talk about things that are real, even though things that are real can also be fun and things that are fun can also be real. But you know what? My family is going through some shit right now. And so these conversations matter to me. They matter. And I feel guilty a little bit that I helped us drag this conversation into some place that's so deep. But I mean, these are the conversations that are at the top of my mind right now. How do we help our kids to function in 2026 when the genders aren't speaking to each other, when the kids don't have the money to be able to afford to live, they can't get their own places to live, they can't pay their bills?
I think they need to just take over the world and make it work for them. It's gonna happen. I have such great faith in my daughter and her friends to take over and get all this stupid stuff, the wealth inequality and political divide. I think they're going to bring all of those things closer together. They're going to solve some stuff, and it's probably going to be really painful, but I believe in their naive idealism. And I believe in the things that they don't know enough that they're just going to crash through and do something beautiful with this world. I sincerely believe that. Otherwise, I don't know if I could keep getting up in the morning and saying, let's keep going. I think they're going to do it. And I am right here not being able to tell them how to do it, but I know they're going to do it when they get into the positions of power and leadership, that they're going to change things for the better. And I'm going to give all the little teeny wisdom I have at the time to make sure that they feel supported and that they're going to do it. They're going to do it whether I support them or not, but I'm all there for it.
That right there, girl, is exactly what I was talking about, is that we can share wisdom, but you and I both have the ability to step back and say, we don't have it all figured out for you.
Of course we don't. I feel like we're going to throw them to the wolves, and they're going to have those wolves tied up into puppy dogs in such a short period of time.
You know what? They're going to teach the wolves to sing Kumbaya. Upcoming generation, y'all are going to be just fine. At some point, I would love to sit down and teach you how to wrap presents, and I would love to teach you how to make cookies that aren't flat. But all of the big stuff, you just got to figure it out.
Look out for next week's episode of Super Random Things with Those Sisters. I was applying today for a CAA card, which is AAA, but for Canada. I got a flat tire this week, and I thought, why not just apply for that? And in the application profile, name, last name, address, title, and I thought, okay, great. I have a PhD. I go by Dr. Charnock. Great, I'll go with Doctor. The only two options were Mr. or Mrs. I was irritated, and then I felt bad for being irritated because it's such a small, stupid thing. But it's not the only thing. It's over and over and over our whole lives in these small ways of squishing us into these boxes that are obedient married women. And it's just not
Girl,
who I am.
I hear you. I think that the world is so scared of powerful, strong, confident women. And I think that we try so hard to squish us into these boxes. I was just having this conversation with my daughter not too long ago. She's 21. I was explaining to her how when I was younger, there was a singular linear path to success. That was it. One way to succeed. And that included getting good grades, go to college, get a spouse, get a house and a career, and then kids, and then the retirement plan, empty nest retirement, and then sail to the end of your days. That was it. That was the plan. And if you fell off that plan for any reason, your life was ruined. If you didn't go to college, your life was ruined. If you didn't have children, your life was ruined. If you had children too early, your life was ruined. If you didn't get married, your life was ruined. And I just feel like we're living in a time now where we, first of all, have finally given ourselves permission not to make that linear path the only singular pathway. But also at the same time, I think we're in this crunch time. The people who have moved on past that path are ready to just like, let's go live a totally different kind of life. But the people who liked that pathway because it was safe for them, men, some,
I heard it before you said it.
They don't want this new open-ended way of living because it requires them to step up and have to live differently. They have to put in more work. Quite frankly, they have to put in more effort to live in a world where everybody's success is individualized. When the whole system was set up to allow them to just get married and all they had to do was bring home a paycheck and act as if that was the biggest contribution to the entire family was the paycheck. And look at me for doing that. I'm the protector. Anyway. So I think we're in a flashpoint right now where the new way of living is conflicting with the old power.
The singularity of life path back then, I think, was a form of oppression. And now that we have other options besides that one single path, it's allowing us to be more bold and more open and to be a little bit louder as women. I think that singular life path isn't always compatible with being a loud, powerful woman. Like getting married. You want to be meek enough and please a man enough to get married. And if you don't get married, there's something wrong with you if you're too loud to be married. And then in our careers, if we spoke up too much, we were bitchy. If a man spoke up too much, he was assertive and a leader. So all of these things in that sort of old school life path didn't allow for us to be loud, powerful women. And now that we've sort of broken through that and there are other ways to live our lives, we can be loud. And yet, at least in my life, I still feel that pull of being sorry for it or feeling bad about it or having to apologize for it. I've worked hard enough to be a loud, powerful woman and to be single and to do all of these things on my own. And I'm happy to do that. But I don't want to continually have to apologize. I think I have to work on myself to not feel like I need to apologize when I am loud.
If you are liking our content, please like and subscribe. It's free, it helps the algorithm. And if not for us, do it for the dogs.
Thank you.